Hello everyone, this is Mr. Dollar, also known as Peace Daddy, and today's lesson is going to be on multiples. We are going to do a lesson that is going to help us recognize that a whole number is a multiple of each of its factors. And we're going to find all of the factors for a whole number between 1 and 100. And we're going to determine whether the number is prime or composite. And through this series of lessons on multiples, there's going to be handouts, if you're in my class, that you can find on our Google Classroom Drive. And you can also use virtualmontessorimoterials.com. I'm going to be using the Montessori materials, but if you don't have those at home, you can go to that website, virtualmontessorimoterials.com, and use the bead bars that are on that website. And you'll also need colored pencils today, so if you have some colored pencils, grab those and maybe pause the video and then come back when you're ready. All right. So let's get started. The first thing that I'm going to do is lay out a bead chain of 3 and a bead chain of, let's use the 3, and we can use the 7. So there's a 3 bead chain and a 7 bead chain. And I just want you to see in your head or out loud at home if you can count by 3s. All right, so this one would be 3, 6, 9, and I teach a upper Montessori class, so if you've been through a lower Montessori class, you should have had a lesson on skip counting. And these beads you'll recognize come from the bead cabinet. And we can use these beads to skip count with. We can also do the same thing with our 7s. Let's see if you know how to skip count by 7s. So you would start out here and you would say 7, 14, 21, and so on. And you can also use the tickets that come with the bead cabinet work, and as you're skip counting, you would take out the appropriate ticket and put it in its place. So where the 3 goes, you would put a 3 there, and the 6 and a 9, and so on and so forth, and you can label those if you happen to have the Montessori materials. And you can always make your own tickets. You could just use a 3x5 card and cut them up. So for the 7s, the tickets are white, they match the chain. 7 would go there, 14 would go there, and so on and so forth. That's how you use that work when you're skip counting. And you can skip count all the way. These are the short chains. You could use the long chains and skip count with those once you've practiced the short chains. So think about some different multiples of different numbers. Tell me the multiples. You can say them out loud if you want to, or you can think about it in your head. What are some of the multiples of 4? What are some of the multiples of 6? So now what we're going to do is we are going to see how many ways there are for finding multiples. The first way would be by laying out the bead chains, or you could lay out individual beads. I said earlier that you could go to virtualmontessori.com, and on virtualmontessorimoterials.com there is a section called bead bars, and you could just lay out the 4 beads on that website and you could count them: 4, 8, 12, 16, and so on and so forth. So in your copybook, you need to write down, since we've started with the multiples of 4, you can draw a 4 chain and you can write down that 4 is a multiple of 4, and 8 is a multiple of 4, and 12 is a multiple of 4. And you could make a list in your copybook of all the multiples that you know using the bead chain or using that website that I talked about. You could just make a list, and you can see that multiples, you have many multiples for the different numbers. So 4 has lots of multiples, and multiples of numbers higher than 10, you could work with the golden bead material, and you could make multiples of those numbers using a combination of a 10 bar and a 2 bar to make 12, for instance. So after you've had some time to practice skip counting, or if you feel confident in your ability to skip count, then what you're going to want to do is the next work is using the first table of multiples. And the first table of multiples looks like this. It's just basically a 100 grid, like you use when you use a 100 board. So you use a 100 grid, and again, this is on if you're in my class and you're using Google Classroom, this is on the Google Classroom drive. I have a copy of this on there for you, and you print this out, and for the multiples of 2, you would go through and make a green dot over every multiple of 2. And then after you've completely filled out the multiples of 2, then you would go to the multiples of 3. And you would put a different colored dot on the multiples of 3. You're going to use pink for 3. And you can stop there and think about the patterns that they make. You might want to note that all the green dots are vertical columns, and you can notice that that's a pattern, and you can notice that all the pink dots for 3 are a diagonal pattern. They go from the top right to the bottom left. And you could also do multiples of 2 or 3 different numbers using different colors of dots on the same table. So again, you could stop right here, and then you could print out a different table, and you could experiment with 4 and 5, or maybe 4, 6, and 8. All the different combinations are left up to you. Just make sure that the colors of the dots correspond to the colors of the bead chains. So that's it for this lesson. That's our first lesson in this series of lessons called Multiples. And as always, I want to thank you for watching. This has been Peace Daddy. See you next time.